Swamiji, you are muted.
Keshavam Vadarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krito Vande Bhagavantau Punaha Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagini Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Shanti 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 Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha. So before we start the next step, I will be very briefly talking about what we were doing in the last class. Let me share the page for you to find it easier. Page of the text. I'll just share it. Please go with me. I think you already have it. And we were looking at it. Vivekhitam Arthamaha Paramatmeti. Yeah, the technique Nishaya. You remember the Purvapaksha, the student, had asked one question. Refute this whole samsara. Let's follow an entry in the doing the sadhana to reach there, and even after he has been established in that ultimate truth, he is in a state in which he recognizes the surrounding world, but he is not touched by it. So apratitihi, it's not a negation, complete elimination of this material reality around you. It's not pralaya of the samsara, which is equated with liberation. Therefore, mithyatva nishchaya is the real way ahead, where, just give me a second, there's a bit of noise. I would just come, give me exactly 2 minutes. I'll come back. I'll just tell these guys and come back. Give me 1 second. Okay, we are done. So, what we were discussing at that time was that uh, that you have two things to do. One is mithyatva nishaya, that whatever we are experiencing in our everyday lives, we would continue to experience the the antakarna, the manomaya kosha, the vijnanamaya kosha. They would be affected. The annamaya kosha, if you do not take food, it will be affected. But what you would understand is that this is not the self. That's number one. Number two is you also have the satyatva nishchaya. When you negate these layers, it's like peeling the onion. When you deny all this, what remains in the end is not vacuum, is not shunyata, as in the case of the Buddhists. Paramatma vaseshopi tat satyatva vinishchayaha na jagat vismritir no ched jivana muktir na sambhavet. So it's not jagata vishmriti, it's not so easy. If that was the case, as we had a very good discussion in the previous class, one person could take a bit of alcohol, could take any kind of intoxicant, and then get into a state of trance or sleep, and then confuse that as liberation, which is not. And I think I had left a couple of sentences. I would quickly rush through it before we go to the next level of discussions. जगत जीवयोर मिथ्यात्व ज्ञान सिद्धो परमात्मा वशेषः परमात्मनः परिशिष्टता नाम तत् सत्यत्व विनिश्चयः परमात्मा एव सत्यम इति दृढ़ ज्ञानमेव. Jagat Jivayor. There is Jagat and there is Jivo. Mithyatva Jnana Siddho. In order to have that this Jagat and Jiva, these two, Swarupataha, are not real. In Paramartha sense, they are not real. Who? We have to establish it. Paramatma Vaseshaha Paramatmanaha Parishishtaya. What remains in the end is that only Brahman is real. The pictures that you are seeing on it, it's like the Chidvastu, the Dhauta Pata, the canvas, that is the foundation on which you have this, Ghatita, you have that painting which is given to give it a smooth surface on which you can draw lines and then you fill colors. Parishishtata nama Ishvara Satyatva Vinishyaha. How do you ascertain it? Remove the layers and layers of superimpositions. Paramatma eva satyamiti dridha eva. In simple terms, Paramatma eva satyam. That Atma Satyam, everything else is false. That kind of a very strong conviction is going to be the foundation. So you would have to do Mithyatva Nishchaya as a part of your strive, your effort towards doing Satyatva Nishchaya. Now, there is a question from the student. No, no, neti neti iti sarva vastu nam apahani. Why do I do all these two things at the same time? I'll just refute it. No iti, not this, not this. Vastunam apahane yad avasishyate, what remains in the end, tadeva paramatma iti uktatva, that is what you are saying. Kinta swarupa nishchaya prayatna gauravena. Why should I make extra effort to know what is paramatma and that alone is real? Jagataha mithyatva jnanena eva tad vismritya bandhaka prapancha nivrittehe. He's saying, what is this whole study problem? I have to do Vedanta Shravana Manana Nididhyasana. You gave me a handle, one technique. What is that? Refute everything. Subjugate. And that will establish the truth, because all falsehood would go. He's saying, no, that's not true. Ataha paramatma avasishyate iti anena jagata vishmriti rupa avasesha eva vivakshanya iti asankhya aha. Somebody might get confused. What is the need for looking for God? What is the need for having Brahmagyana, reading Upanishads or anything? I have a simple way. Just refute everything, deny everything. That is what a lot of people do, isn't it? They criticize whatever is happening. They say we are critiques, we are social critiques, we are theorists. They will reject everything. Then good thing will happen, but that doesn't happen. You have to also show the way forward. You have to have a certain positivity about whatever you are suggesting. You're just refuting everything. That doesn't lead you anywhere. And Vedanta also says this refutation in itself is not a solution. You also have to focus your attention on what is that adhishtan. You have to have some understanding of it. Otherwise, you are going to get sucked into self-imposed state of delusion or ignorance, a new form of ignorance. अतः परमात्मा अवसित्यते इत्यनेन जगद विस्मृति रूपावशेष एव विवक्षण्य iti asankhya. Somebody might say, forgetting the world alone is the real way forward. The Acharya says, no. No iti. Jagad vismritihi. Jagato avhanam na avaseshaha. When you say vismriti, then Jagat vanishes. It's not avaseshaha. Avasishyate, what remains in the end. But you are taking some drugs and getting into a state of delusion, getting to a state of sedation. That is not what is Atmagyana. No chet, if you don't understand what is avasesha, what is avhana. Dissociation is not a technique for liberation. There is a problem, you run away from it. That's not a solution. Therefore, he's saying, no chet, jagad vishmritir eva avasesha iti uchyate chet. If that's what you're arguing, that forgetting the world, forgetting everything, that is liberation. Jivana muktihi jivataha eva prak sarira apatat muktihi. What do you mean by jivana mukti? Till the body falls, you're in a state of liberation after atmajnana. Then he's saying Brahma bhava pattir na sambhaved. Then he gets Brahma bhava, Brahmavid Brahmiva bhavati. Is ati virakta. He's Brahmavid Vara, Brahmavid Varyan, Brahmavid Varishta. We have discussed that while doing Madhusudana Saraswati's very intricate details about how a person travels from one stage to the other in the Bhagavad Gita, Gudharth Deepika. Here, Praksarira apatat muktihi brahmabhavapatir na sambhavet jagata mithyatvepi. Even if you deny the world is real, refute it as real, tadbhanasya sarirapatat prag apariharyataya. It may be false, but will continue to appear. Jagat vismritehe. Jagat vismritehe tadanim asatvat jivatah satah. So far you are there, then you that Vishmritehe asatvat, you cannot forget everything. You are still interacting with Brahmava apatir asambhavad iti bhavaha. Now, in the verse number, we have already done it. Oh, I'm sorry. We have moved forward. I was stuck at the verse number 14. We have finished already 17. Anyway, I'll just touch upon the mulas. Paroksha cha paroksheti vidyadvedha vicharaja. There are two ways of jnana. Now we are talking about liberation. One is paroksha jnana, the other one is aporoksha jnana. Tatra paroksha vidyapto vicharo yam sampati. There is saying when you actually have a, so it's not till you die, they say, obviously. Asuktir, amritir, kalam, nayat vedanta chintaya. You can become superfluous. It's not required. Okay. Asti brahmeti ched veda paroksha jnanam eva tat. If you're saying Brahma asti, that much you know. So with a lot of study, you have actually experienced it. We have had a discussion in the previous class. Then you can say that that is aporoksha jnana. So one is paroksha jnana, which is largely intellectual, largely academic. The other one is upalabdhi, that is self-realization. When you have that self-realization, is itself knowledge in that sense. Jnana is that, when you have this kind of a bhakti, then it's a vehicle for knowledge, vehicle is Chaitanya Swarupa. Then it's not a means to an end. It is Swarupa. It's an end in itself. And there is no second. There is only one consciousness. So Aham Brahme. Now tat sakhyadakara siddhyartham atma tattvam vivichyate yenayam sarva sansara sadhya eva vimuchyate. Therefore, tat sakshatkara siddhyartham. Tat means Atma. Atma sakshatkara. Else, he comes into your room, says hello, shakes your hands, and sits with you. It's not a physical being. It's not subtle or gross. It's neither. It's neither subtle nor gross. It doesn't have any. It's beyond time, space, or any physical, neither matter nor energy. It's pure consciousness. It's not physical luminosity. It is self-luminous, but it's not a physical light. In fact, that provides light to all sources of physical insights. Therefore, he's saying Atma Tattvam Vivichyate. You need to do Vichara. Atma Anatma Vichara. Yenayam, by which, through this Vichara, Yena Vicharena Ayam Sarva Sansarat. All these cycles of repetition, If you look at a lot of psychologists who are giving a lot of talks, even on the internet, why a lot of patterns are repeating in our lives, why we commit the same mistake again and again, what is there in the subconscious. This is true, it happens. But you know what is more true, much true compared to all this? That there is, in fact, a pattern of our birth and death. All these things are kind of written into that code. And Vedanta is telling us how to crack that code and go beyond it. He sub sarva sansarat sadhya eva vimuchyate. Then you are immediately liberated. Are you going to jump out of your life, go somewhere, have wings, look like an angel, become very light and fly into the sky? We are not talking and fantasizing about all this as liberation. That's what we did as children. Here, it's in the Jnana Parampara, we're going to have self realization. And therefore, to have Mithyatva Nishya of Sansara, we had some discussion. Then we have to have some Satyatva Nishya about the Atma. Therefore, we need to know what is this Atma. Earlier, he gave us the example of a piece of cloth, which is the pure piece of cloth, the canvas. Then the next level is that smooth surface is created with a certain paint. You give a layer, then draw lines, that is Sutratma, and then you give colors, which is Virat. You have Jiva, you have Jagat, you have Ishvara. These three are there. Now he will tell Chaitanya itself is fourfold. So there would be some apparent contradiction and we'll resolve it, go forward. What is this Chaitanya which is a fourfold? There it was in a different context. Chaitanya Suddhachit is that white piece of cloth. Then he mentioned about the lines, Hiranyagarbha, Sutratma. Then he mentioned about the colors. First he mentioned about that layer, white layer, Antaryami, Ishvara. And then there is another Upadhi of the Ishvara, which becomes Hiranyagarbha. Another Upadhi Ishvara, he becomes Virat. Stula, Shukshma, and a Karana Rupa. And then you have Vishuddha Chita, this Ishvara and Chaitanya we have discussed. And then Jiva remains at the bottom. Right? That's what we have discussed. Now he's saying Chatur Vidya Visharaha, Chit Chatur Vidya. The consciousness is of four types. What are the intention? How do we make sense of it? These are complicated philosophical issues. In the context of larger debates within Advaita Vedanta, there is something called Abhasavad of Sureshwaracharya. There is Avachedavad of Bhamadikara, Vachaspati Mishra, and there is Vivaranavad or Pratibimbavad of Vidyaranya Muni, which comes in the Vivarana tradition. You know, this in the tradition of these, the most important commentary on the Brahma Sutra Chatursutris. Yeah. So Panchapadika Vivarana, he mentions that. So in that context, so we have these three, four views. We have the ultimately Ajatavada. Gaudapada Acharya of Shankaracharya has written those commentaries on the Gaudapada Karikas and the Mandukya Upanishads. We have Ajatavada, Abhasavada, Pratibimbavada, and Avachedavada. And you have a few variations of these four major schools of thought. And these are all captured in different Prakarana Granthas. So here we are trying to have a discussion on Pratibimbavada with some mild indirect references to the Avhasavada. But I'm not trying to trouble you with these theoretical discussions. We will straightway go to the slokas, and then in the context of discussing them, we'll try to have a flavor of what are the philosophical issues being discussed without troubling ourselves too much in analytical terms with a lot of jargon. Kutosto Brahma Jivesha Vityevam Chichaturvidha Ghatakasha Mahakasho Jalakasha Prakeyatha. Now I tell you, this particular thing, if you perfect, then you can make sense of what Vedanta talks about, how Chaitanya gets a lot of upadhis. We mentioned that upadhi, right? Upadhi means there is no real relation. Vidyamanatve sati, it is present. And then karya ananvayate sati, no real relationship with that particular thing. And then what? There are two more things. Itara Vyavartakam, however it differentiates. So you have a crystal, you get a rose flower, it looks red. Green flower, it looks green. Now, green crystal, if you say, that is sopadhika with upadhi. It's not green. There is no real relationship. However, you are being able to distinguish this particular crystal, which looks green, from another which looks red, because there is a rose flower next to it. So it's a differentiator. Upadhi is a differentiator, but upadhi, even though it's a differentiator, upadhi would not give you, upadhi would not give you any real relationship. That you have to understand. That upadhi doesn't give you any real relationship. Let's look at how the shloka moves forward. Kutosto brahmaji vesha vityevam chi chaturvidha. Kutastha is one. What is the second one? Brahma. What is the third one? Jiva. And what? Ishau. Jiva, Ishau. Iti evam. There is sandhi there. Jiveshau ityevam chit chaturvidha. So they become four types. Same Chaitanya, with upadhis, they become four types. Now we have to give certain illustrations. This is what is exemplified, the target of your examples, illustration. You have an illustration. Why are you having an illustration? To explain something. So, what is the subject of illustration? Is first mentioned in the first half. Second half, to make it easy to understand, is giving illustrations. घटाकाश महाकाशो जलाकाश भ्रखे yatha. Now, ghatakasha. So, just look at this bottle. Let's imagine it's a ghata. This part is empty. Half of it there's water. So you have ghatakasha, empty space. Space is there inside. And then there is mahakasa. Outside the space is there. The space inside this bottle and the space outside the bottle is only space. Ghatakasha and a mahakasha. And similarly here you see some water here. Okay, now it will not help us to understand it. Now imagine a picture in which is filled with water. The water is still. Now the akasa gets reflected on the surface at night. Imagine that there's a big pot of water. In villages, they used to have those big pots of water during summers, during feasts. They would bring those. It can carry roughly like 500, maybe sometimes 500 liters of water. It will arams, it will carry those huge amount of water. It has a big opening. It has something to cover it. There's a lid. You remove the lid and look at that. It reflects the sky. It reflects the moon, the stars. Yeah, it behaves like a mirror. That is jalakasha. And in the clouds when it's about to rain, it looks dark blue. Why so? Why it looks? Because it reflects the same water particles. It because the water particles are also reflecting that akasha. They're reflecting the akasha and they look dark. That is the example given here. Let's not get into the signs of it. But we all know that big clouds, when they're about to rain, they look very dark. There are two explanations. They cover the sun, and that's why they look dark, you can say. We're saying no, because they're carrying water particles, and all these water particles are the clouds. They carry water, and those water particles also reflect the sky. Everything reflects. And when you see a large mass of water, they reflect. Tiny particles also reflect. Together create that dark cloud. That is Meghakasha. And he would now compare these with different upadhis and what form or name consciousness carries when it gets these kinds of superimpositions. Ghatakasha, Mahakasha, Jalakasha, Abhrakasha, Abhra Akasha, Meghakasha. That is what we are doing. K means Akasha. Now look at the commentary here. Spastah Purvardha. Purvardha is very clear, he's saying. There is nothing difficult here. Yeah. And what is he trying to say here? He's saying, look here. Akasha chaturvidha dishyate tatha eva. So in the beginning, what he says, the sadhana vivakshaya adau paramatmanah pratiyamanam chit chaturvidyam. Now, tat sadhana vivakshaya. Tat sadhana means for atma sakshatkara sadhana vivakshaya. We want to have self realization. We have to follow some path. And what is that path? Somebody has to explain that first. So, what is it? Please explain. The Adu Paramatmanaha Pratiyamanam Chit Chaturvidyam. That this Paramatma appears in four ways or manners, four names and forms we give. Same pure consciousness. And what are these? Kutastha Brahma, Jivesho Ityevam Chit Chaturvidha Ghatakasha Mahakasho Jalakasha Vrakhe Yatha. Okay? Abhrakha, Abhrakasha, Kha. Now this Dvivachana, Jalakasha, Abhrakha. So like Phalam Phale Phalane, it becomes K. Spastaha is saying easy. Jatha Ghatakasho Mahakasho Jalakasho Abhrakham. That means Abhrakham means Meghakasham. Iti Akasa Chaturvidho Drishye Tatha Eva. So this is the illustration. Sky, fourfold, one they reflected in water, the other one reflected in the clouds. Then that akasha, the sky which is there, general sky, the cosmic sky, and the one which is kind of delimited within the contours of a ghata or a pitcher. Therefore, the question, how do you say nanu chaturvidyam asvin prakarane apurvataya pradeshyatam na ghadade? But suddenly you are bringing in a new theory here. In the beginning of this chapter only, you mentioned about Chaitanya, yeah, the Suddhapata, and then Ghatita, and then Rekhankita, and then Ranjita with colors. So these are different layers of Ishvara. So you have Ishvara, Vishuddhachit, and Jiva. Three only. And suddenly you are starting a new theory here. New theories every day. It's like children bringing in new justifications as to why they shouldn't study, why they need a holiday again, all that. So he's saying, Nano chit chaturvidyam asmin prakarani apurvataya. Suddenly you are introducing pradarsitam naghadate anyatra jiva isho vishuddhachit iti traividhyasya uktehe. Before you said there are three types: jiva, ishvara, and suddha chaitanya. And ishvara you mentioned, okay, you have this hiranyagarbha, antaryami hiranyagarbha, and virat vaishwanara, karana sharira and the taijasa, yeah, and then shukshma sharira and with the sthula sharira during the jagrata avastha. Anyatra vishuddhasya eva chitaha kutastha iti brahma iti cha bhedena vyavahara darshanat. Now this example, he's trying to Travisya uktehe. He's saying, no, please understand, don't get super excited, don't get depressed. I'm not here to mislead you. I'm not having any problem. Drishyate, he's saying, यथा घटाकाशो महाकाशो जलाकाश अभ्रे अभ्रे प्रतिबिंबित आकाशो अभ्रकम इति आकाश चतुर्विधो दृश्यते तथा एव इत्यर्थः. न क्वचित् न चातुर्विध्यम् अस्मिन् प्रकरणे अपूर्वतया प्रदर्शितं न लभते अन्यत्र जीवो ईशो विशुद्धाचेद् इति त्रैविध्यस्य एव उक्तः उक्तेः इति चेत्. No, you have only said three types: Jiva, Ishvara, and Suddha Chaitanya. Iti chet, no. You didn't listen to it properly. Anyatra Vishuddhasya eva chitaha kutastha iti brahmeti cha bhedena vyavahara darshana. That Vishuddhachit you are telling, no. We can split it as two. How? How can you split it? Ghatakasha, Mahakasha. It's Akasa only. I am not putting any factor which contaminates them, colors them, anything. Same akasha. Here there is one adjective, ghata adjective, ghatakasha. It's not an adjective, it's not visheshana, it's one upadhi. So it becomes, and he would explain in the next, what is this ghatavachinna akasha, what is the meaning of avachinna, we'll explain. Tad vyavaharasya kalpita bheda mulakatvepi Ghatakasha and Akasha, is the Ghatakasha different from the Mahakasha? No, it's space only. Kalpita Veda Mulakatvepi, it's imaginary distinction between Ghatakasha and Mahakasha. Even then, it's not meaningless. We do a lot of Kalpita things, they are not meaningless, they are useful. Like we did Sastriya Dvaita and Asastriya Dvaita. Sastriya Dvaita, you are accepting some duality. Why? You go to an guru, you will have some pujan of Ganesh when you are starting your studies. You would remember Ma Saraswati ji, yeah? Or if you're Christian, you remember Jesus in the beginning, even if you're a student of Vedanta. A lot of people in the West, they remember their respective gods. What is the problem? Vedanta has no problem. And then you study it. So these Vedatmaka vritti of the mind, these are useful, then it is okay. Unuseful, not okay. Like in the Nishkama karma you want to do. So how do you do? Phalasanga rahita daya Ishwara arapana vidya. You will do all this. Veda is there or not? Ishwara arapana vidya. Who will give whom? You'll surrender the fruits of your action to God. God is different from you. Advaita Vedanta says everything is one. But you are starting with Mangala Charanam. No, we are starting with Mangala Charanam every day so that there are no disturbances in our study. These are Veda, right? These are Veda vrittis. But he's saying Brahmatmeka Jnana Upayateya. Yeah, there is some Veda, some duality, but they're useful for us to establish ourselves in that state of oneness, equanimity. Sarvehi Asritatvacha, everybody does it. It's not me, I'm advising you to do it. This is general practice. Kalpitam kutastha brahmanora bhedam ashritya atra chatra vidya uktehe. So this is a kalpita bheda between kutastha and Brahma because both are nirguna, nirakara, ashanga. Whether it is kutastha, is nirvikara. Suddha Brahma is nirvikara. Then why are you using this word kutastha? Because without accepting this understanding of kutastha, remember one thing, you'd be in a big problem. What is that big problem? Because then it will become very difficult for you to explain Tattvamasi statement. Because here you're mentioning about Pratyak Chaitanya and then Suddha Chaitanya, Tattvamasi, you are talking about Vachyartha and Lakshyartha. In that sense, two Vachyarthas, two Lakshyarthas, you are four. That is what we are doing here. The Acharya is explaining Chatra Vidya Uktehe Yam cha kalpana jigyasunam sukhabodhaya asritaiti na kapi vipratibhatihi. Yam cha kalpana, this imagination. Jigyasunam, those who are interested to understand what is Atma Tattva. Sukhabodhaya, in order to make it easy for them to grasp Vedanta, asritaiti. So I'm relying on this kind of chit chatur vidya Vishleshana that I'm doing, I'm relying on it. Why? For a certain higher purpose. The mother tells this is one, this is two, this is three. Is three fingers three? The child understands it after it grows up. But in the beginning, if you say one, he'll show one finger, two, two fingers, three fingers. And then he does his mathematics counting them, no? Or using stakes or all kinds of things. You have typical tools in which there are tiny pieces, dots and stuff like that, with which they do their calculations, basic arithmetic. Then the moment he reaches about 6.5, is out of the KG, is getting into standard one, finds it very easy. He just does everything mentally. He doesn't rely on his fingers and hands. He doesn't say one, two, three. No, he doesn't do any of these. In the beginning, one means this, two means this. Similarly, this kalpana that we are doing is not going to put us in a cage. This is a means to have a subtler, higher understanding, the ultimate, subtlest of understandings, where we are not outside of the understanding. We are that very consciousness. Now, if that is the case, let's start with the first two. So, ghatakasa mahakaso suvigyato iti jalakasam vibhrunoti ghata ityadina. He's saying ghatakasa mahakasa is easy, everybody understands. Easy to explain. So let me now focus on what is jalakasha and abhrakasha or meghakasha. Jalakasam vibhrunati. First I will explain What is this Jalakash? Ghata ityadina, starting with this particular mantra. घटावच्छिन्नखे नीरं यत्तत्र प्रतिबिम्बितः साभ्रनक्षत्र आकाशो जलाकाश उदीरितः घटावच्छिन्न आकाशे. First, he will explain what is this avachinna word. In Vedanta, in Nyaya, you have a lot of repetition of this word avachhedaga, avachedya, avachinna, yeah, avachedagata, nirubita, avachinna, all kinds of dramas are there in the Nyaya language. So just here, ghatavachinna akashe, that akasha which is defined, there is an adjunct, a limiting adjunct, which is kind of defined within, like for example, the space, the bottle space. Best example to understand it, very easy. What is the bottle space? Bottle avachinna akasha. The contours of this bottle defines the limits of this akasa. Imaginary akasa remains the same. Ghatavachinna khe niram yat tatra pratibimbitaha. And there in this ghatakasha, you have water filled till this point. Okay? Ghatakasha, whole of this bottle, half of that ghatakasha is filled with water. And there, if you put it in outside the room, and the sky gets reflected, imagine it's a big surface, it's not transparent, then it will behave like a mirror, it will reflect it. Sabhra nakshatra akasha, sa avrena saha. So abhra and nakshatra, abhra is the clouds, nakshatra is the stars, moon, everything. You just imagine everything. Savar nakshatra akasha, akasa, along with if there are any clouds, if there are stars, the moon, depending on the particular day in the fortnight, that will all be reflected in the water. That is referred to as jalakasha. What are the critical thing to understand here? First thing is that jalakasha is not real. Interesting thing, you see, that jalakasha is not real. It looks like akasha, that's not the real akasha. And it's just a reflection. But it's a carbon copy. It's like an image of what exists up with some inversions here. Yeah. So who is that guy? He will explain to us. What is that jalakasha then? That jalakasha is us, the jiva, the buddhi that we see. He will explain that. Now let's start with the first line. Aparichinnasya abhyapakatvena ghatantaravartino mahakasasya ghatopadivasaad ghatakasa iti namantaram vyavahara gocharam bhavati. What does it mean? Now you see, if you are talking about a vyapya vyapaka sambandha, yatra tatra dhumah tatra tatra vanni. Vanni is vyapaka, right? And then in some cases, there is smoke, there is fire. What about a hot piece of iron? What about coal-fired ovens? There is no smoke, but there's fire. Fire can be in a heater, yeah, and then you have these induction heaters. You have different kind of tools, instruments which produce heat, which behave like fire. But there is no smoke. When you are using electric coils, there's no smoke. Different kind of ovens are there in the market. But in some cases, we are using wood or some carbon and there is some smoke. Therefore, what you say that aparichinnasya abhyapagatvena. So this ghatakas is akash only. Then how can you say wherever there is ghatakasa, there is akasha? Can you imagine? Ghatakasa is just imaginary. Therefore, he is saying ghatantaravartinaha mahakasasya ghatopadivasat. Ghata is an upadhi. Because there is no real relationship between the space inside this bottle and the bottle. We have to understand this. Ghata is not an adjective. Whenever you say intelligent boy, intelligence and the boy, there is karya anvayatva between these two because the intelligence sort of gears up how quickly he understands his cognitive faculties, his skills with mathematics, etc. This ghata akasha, the ghata doesn't anything about this akasha. just an imaginary relationship. There's no real relationship. Therefore, it's upadhi. And this ghata now defines this akasha, therefore, it becomes avachedaka. Avachedaka is something which defines, differentiates. Avachedaka, and that akasha becomes avachedya. So the akasha is what is defined, and this ghata, this bottle, is what is defining. So there is avachedaka, avachidya sambandha. And then at the end, what do you have? Ghatavachinna. The space defined with the contours of this bottle is called bottle space. The bottle becomes that defining feature, that differentiating feature. And therefore, that becomes avachedaka. And the bottle avachinna akasa means the bottle, if the contours of the space we are talking about are fixed by the contours of that bottle and its size. These are technical words. Just you have to listen to them. Don't get overburdened. They're easy to understand. Once we listen to them 3, 4 times, easy to deal with it. Like we did in school when suddenly they introduced sine theta, cos theta, went over our heads. They will use geometry to explain what is sine theta, and suddenly then use in symbols, isn't it? And after a few weeks, you're playing with it. You're having good fun. You have no problem. Same with all this. अपरिच्छिन्नस्य अव्यापकत्वेन घटान्तर्वर्तिनो महाकाशस्य घटोपाधिवसात् घटाकाश इति नामान्तरं व्यवहारगोचरं भवति. व्यवहारगोचरं व्यवहारविषयं भवति. We do use ghatakasha even though it's imaginary. येन अवच्छिद्यते सो अवच्छेदकमिति. येन ghatena avachhidyate. It's defined with the contours of this bottle. That is called avachedakam. I explained. That's what is written. Yo avachhidyate so avachinnaha. And that which is defined is defined. This is ghata avachinna akasha. Ghata avachinna. Who cut the akasha? Nobody cuts the akasha. It's called, defined by the upadhi of the ghata. That is ghata avachinna iti cha uchyate. It's like a primary school teacher. The commentator is so compassionate. He's trying to make it very easy for us. Ghatavichinna khe. Ghatavachinna khe means akashe. Ghatena parimita iva. As if it's limited by ghata. Parimita iva bhasamane. It appears like that. Ghatavachinna akashe. Yan neeram vidyate. Yan neeram. The printing is not very clear. Yat neeram ta becomes na. So, yan neeram vidyate. That water which is there, half of this bottle has some water. Easy for us to understand. This much, that na neeram vidyate. Tatra tadrisha jale pratibimbitaha. In this much water, now expand it. Imagine this. You have 10 gallons of water, a big water surface, and it's a dark colored container. The water behaves like a mirror, it reflects. Then what happens? Ghatena parimita iva. He said, Tadrish jale pratibimbitaha savra nakshitra. The clouds and the stars, everything get reflected. Akasho jalakasa iti udiritaha uktaha. That is what is called jalakasa. Clear? To explain one word, jalakasha, bringing in so much of explanation, there must be a very intelligent purpose. You know what is that intelligent purpose? Because they have to explain who is suffering here. We are suffering. It is that jalakasha you carry, that ghata, in a very quiet manner. It appears as if the sun, the moon, the clouds, everything which is in the water, it's moving. Nothing is moving. Akasa isn't moving. Jalakasa can move. Akasa wouldn't move. Done. That is the sole purpose. It's like a mirror you're using and you're reflecting the sun. Sun isn't moving. That mirror which reflects the sun, you're moving, and children sitting inside a room is saying, look, the sun is moving from left to right. It's the mirror which is moving. These examples would be given again and again. And these are ways in which he's trying to hammer into our brains that you are not suffering. The Atma isn't suffering. It's essentially the human subjectivity because of which we have these imaginations appear as real. That is the purpose of this example. But we are going to move further because that's not the only game, because we have to also explain how the Ishvara comes. Then he's saying Meghakasha is like that. Sutratma Hiranyagarbha Ishvara, that Ishvara thing that you're talking about, that's Samasti. That is also Pratibimbita. It's very beautiful. Let's look at it. Meghakasa Surupam Vivriyate. Vivriyate means he's giving a vivarana, he's elaborating. Mahakasasya iti. Mahakasasya madhyeyan meghamandalamikshyate pratibimbataya tatra meghakaso jale stitah. Mahakasasya madhye. There is Mahakasha, the whole cosmic sky. Madhye, at a particular point. What happens? You have clouds. Yana Meghamandalam Ikshate. The Meghamandala means, okay, set of clouds you see because it's monsoon, overcast sky. And then what happens? Pratibimbataya tatra meghakasho jale stitaha. He would prove why he's talking about meghakasha. Are you able to see like you see your face in the mirror? Is the akasa seeing its face in those clouds? How did you verify sitting here, reading your Vedanta texts or writing something in a small room? He would give some anumana pramana. He'll use syllogism. Pratibimbataya tatra, there, where? That Meghamandale, where you are having Pratibimbataya tatra means Meghamandale, Meghakashaha jale stitaha tatra. Because you are talking about a Meghamandala, you have a set of clouds. What do they carry? They carry water particles in a gaseous state, and when there is precipitation, they're going to fall down. We're going to call it rain. Therefore, he's saying Meghakasho jale stitaha. First thing, he's saying there is water. They are in the form of very tiny particles. There is precipitation, it's going to rain. But until then, the akasa is still reflected in them. Spasto arthaha meghamandale vidyamane jale. In the meghamandala, the water which is present there, pratibimbita akasha meghakasha ityarthaha. That is meghakasha. That becomes samasti, the Ishvara. Here you have these tiny, tiny ghatas and carrying small, small akashas, reflective akasas, and you have this grand sky overcast with a lot of clouds, and that is like Ishvara. Okay? Remember, Maya Pratibimbita Chaitanyam, that Shuddha Chaitanya reflected in Maya, and Maya is also Kalpita, please understand this. The critical thing here is that Ghatakasa itself is Kalpita. It's filled with water, and then the moon and the stars, everything are reflected there. It doesn't have any independent existence. So these are the tricky things that we have to understand. We'll go there. It's coming in after a couple of slokas. Pratibimbataya tatra meghakasho jalesitah. So Maya Pratibimbita Chaitanyam, that is what is Ishvara. Avidya Pratibimbita Chaitanyam is Jiva. So you will have discussion about Jiva and Ishvara in the coming slokas. Let's go. We are done with Jalakasha and the Meghakasha. We are also done with the Ghatakasha and Mahakasha. Now we will go to Drashtantika. Anumana pramanena meghakasam sadhayati. How do you know there is meghakasha? And he's explaining very simple anumana pramanena, inferential logic. Meghangsha rupa mudakam tusarakara sanstitam tatra skha pratibimboyam niratvad anumiyate. Meghangsha rupam udakam. Angsha Rupa Vishishtaha, tiny, tiny particles. You have big clouds. Tusarakara Sanstitam. It as if they are very tiny, with the snowfall. Yeah. And how do they fall? They fall in big chunks. We all die. That's called hailstorm. Then in small, tiny particles, it's like ice sand is falling. Now, if you look at that time into the clouds, there snow there? Yeah, there are snow particles that are falling from those clouds. And because of very low temperatures, falling as snow. In hotter tropical climates, they are falling as tiny, raindrops. We call it a drizzle. If you go to the hilly areas where there are a lot of mountains and the temperature is not very high, it's overcast in Koraput and other places in Orissa, in Assam, Cherrapunji, all places, northeast. During the rainy season, you don't have heavy rain all the time. Sometimes you have very, very tiny rain particles. Yeah. And they're just falling like it's as if like the watery sand particles, watery particles. They don't drench you, you don't get wet or anything. They fall, they dry up, they continue for quite some time. And then when they turn into ice, they call it snowfall, and then they get deposited on earth when they fall there. Therefore, it is tusarakara samsthitam tatra kha pratibimbo ayam. That akasha pratibimbita. The akasha gets reflected in those water particles. Niratvad anumiyate. Why should they reflect the sky? Because they are the water. Water has the capacity to reflect, and therefore they should also reflect. And that is what is called Meghakasha. Let's look at the commentary. Meghangshu Rupam Meghe Sukshma Vayava Rupam Udakam. Sukshma Vayava. Very tiny particles. Tusarakara Sanksitam. How are they there? It's like very tiny particles of snow. Sukshma Vayava Rupena. Not big hands and legs. Sukshma Vayava Rupena. Very, very tiny particles. Stitam. Tatra Tushare Niratvad Ayam. So, Kha Pratibimbo, because these tiny particles of snow which is there in the overcast sky, they are essentially water, and therefore they are able to reflect the sky. Ghatagata jalam iva anumiyate. The way the sky is reflected on the water surface in the ghata or the pitcher, same way those clouds also reflect the sky and they look dark. Pratakshena drishyamanatvad. How do you know it? No, I have seen it during the overcast in the monsoon region. In the monsoon seasons, when you look up, it looks all dark and blue when they're carrying a lot of water. Anumanatvad. So therefore he's saying, this is printing not very clear. Vishyate iti bhavaha. So he's saying, this is how I'm saying. Now we'll go to the next verse. Now this kutastha and jiva, what is the difference he would explain? Ghatakasha, Mahakasha, what is Ghatakasha, and Jalakasha, what is the difference? What is kutastha and what is jiva? We have 6 minutes. We'll be able to do 2 more verses. Kutastha jivayor anyunyadhyasha. This is a tricky thing. Drashtantika kutastham viprunuti. The drishtanta illustration part is done. Jalakasha, Ghatakasha, Mahakasha, Meghakasha. Jalakasha, Meghakasha, Ghatakasha, Mahakasha. Drishtanta is done. Now we are coming to Drashtantika. First we will do what is Kutastha, that is Ghatakasha. अधिष्ठानतया देह द्वयावच्छिन्न चेतनः कूटवन्निर्विकारेण तितः कूटस्थ उच्यते. What is kutastha? Kutastha means what is hidden. That also one thing. Yeah. The other one is kutastha means when you go to an ironsmith, there would be a certain surface. It's a steel surface. It's a steel block in a way, and then he is going to heat different sizes of iron. He's going to heat them up, and then he puts them there. Then he hammers them using a huge hammer, hammers them and gives them different sizes. He makes knives, spears, anything you want, arrows. He would make out of them by hammering them again and again and gives them different shapes. He can make pans and cups and all kinds of things. He uses that surface which provides the support, because he can't do it on stone or something, they'll break. He can't do it on earth, it's going to go down. So he uses an equally powerful, strong iron block on which he hammers it. Now, what is undergoing changes is these small hot pieces of iron which is subjected to hammering. That undergoes change. What doesn't undergo any change is that huge block of iron. That is like kutastha, kudavat. So in us, what's undergoing changes is the mind. What doesn't undergo any changes is that consciousness, which appears as if it's cased within us, but that consciousness is one. That same consciousness is in you and me and everyone else. It's just one consciousness. Like Ghatakasha, we imagine as if these kutasthas are different. Okay, let's look at this beautiful thing and how he explains it. Adhisthana dehadvaya. What is these two deha? Dehadvaya means two bodies. What are these? Yeah, Sukshma Sarira and Sthula Sharira. The Vishwa, Jagrata Avastha, so Annamaya Kosha, Sthula Sharira. And then Sukshma Sarira, the Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, these three together constitute this Sukshma Sharira, this subtle body. And then you have, of course, the Karana Sharira, Sukshma Sthula together. They are the Adhisthanateya, it is the foundation for these two. Dehadvayavachinna chetanaha, dehadvaya, delimited, defined, differentiated by these stula and shukshma sariras, the gross and the subtle bodies. That consciousness is not affected by them. It remains the foundation for them. Chetanaha. Kutavat nirvikarena. Like that platform which doesn't undergo any change, similarly it's unchanging amidst a lot of changes would happen in the sukshma and the sthula sharira. Nirvikarena sthitaha is there, therefore it's called kutastha iti uchyate. Let's look at the beautiful commentary that is provided to help us understand it. Dehadvaya avachinna chetanaha stula shukshma rupa dehadvayena avachinnaha. You now know what is avachinna. Avachedaka, the defining thing. Avachedya, which this process, which is the target of this differentiation. Avachinna, which has been differentiated. So dehadvaya avachinna means that which is differentiated from the grand cosmic Chaitanya with this physical and the subtle body of a person. Chetana stula shikshma rupa dehadvayan avachinnaha yas chetanaha, that consciousness. So adhisthanateya, and that is as the foundation, dehadvayasya adharatvena. That is the foundation for the Sukshma Sharira and the Sthula Sharira, the gross body and the subtle body. Tad Vyatiriktaha, but it's not equivalent, it's not same with the Sukshma Sharira or the Sthula Sharira. Tad Vyatiriktaha Kudavat Kudaha. Kudavat Kudaha. What is that Kudavat? He's going to explain. It's Kudaha. Karmagare, in the workshop, Stapitaha Yasmin Lohamayani Vastuni. There where you bring different kind of iron implements you want to make, hit them up and then you put them bastuni nikshipya, then what do you do? Ayoghanena, then you have a big hammer and you can hit that particular ayaghana. Aya means iron, ghana means a, hammer kind of a thing. Hanyante sa uddhanaha, so then you are hammering it. तद निर्विकारेण स्थितः इत्यतः कूटस्थ इति उच्यते. That is called kutastha because nirvikarena sthitah iti uchyate. That is the verse number 22. Jivam bibrunoti kutastha iti. But we have just hit the time, so we would just put an end to it, and we would carry forward from here in the next class. So let's do the Santi mantras, and if you have any questions, you can ask. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Tat Sat. Okay.